the gap is huge and it's getting bigger between what we can do as companies, what the governments are able to regulate, and where the society is.
Good afternoon, and thank you, Dr. Yassar, for joining us. Today, we're going to discuss something that you know so well about, and it's unifying different entities. So I do want you to tell us first exactly how much you do. I'm aware that you have several different hats. You're the author and strategy advisor and board member for the Dubai Future Economy and the managing director of Posterity Institute as well. One of your main functions is that you unite government and private sector towards strategizing and actually achieving climate action. So please tell us more about exactly what it is that you do in that realm.
Thank you, Sarah, and good afternoon, good evening, everyone. First of all, it's a pleasure to be managed by you, because I've always looked up to your work, which leads me to the fact that we came to the sustainability world from the government perspective. So I spent my life working with government. We've been always advisors to government, and then working with the private sector as well. And in the last 10 years, the sustainability conversation has been growing in this part of the world. And what we found out is that there's a lot of good intentions across the board, right? So everybody wants to do the right thing. But then we also looked around. The fact that we're into COP28 now, and we're talking about missing the deadline or missing the target of 1.5, it's COP28, 28 years. It's not COP2, it's not COP3, there's no benefit of the doubt, it's COP28. So something needs to change. So our theory of change is governments don't want to fix things. But we work with governments, we set policies, we write policies, strategies. They do want to change. And then the theory of change was, well, it's the private sector. They don't want to do it. They're just in it for the profit. We talk to the corporations. They're spending a lot of money. You advise a few of them, like our friends in Magnum and others. And we talk to Forbes. We talk to our partners in PepsiCo, who sort of fund some of our work, HSBC. They all want to do the right thing. So it sort of was a big question for us. Like, if everybody wants to do the right thing, but the right thing isn't happening, something must be missing. And we thought there must be a middleware. I don't know, I'm old enough to remember the old IT legacy systems where you had the huge mainframes and the front interface, and somebody came up with this whole idea of we need middleware. We need middleware software to translate the big mainframe talk to user interface. And we became the middleware working with governments and the private sector, advanced governments who are willing to experiment like the UAE, who said, you know what, give us great ideas, let the private sector lead them, test them, collect the data. We're willing to listen to new policies. So our work is a bit unique. And I said, you know, we look up to people like you who do the technical work, the front-end technical work, the front line, the engineers, the designers. We talk to policymakers, and we try to find unique breakthroughs where we can make a real difference. Short-term difference, medium-term difference, and long-term difference.
Within working with different entities, you know, climate implementation for change, is something that is still relatively new. You need guidance, you know, companies need guidance, government need guidance on this. What would you say is a unifying factor that makes all of us have one commonality? I mean, what is the thing that you see through all your work dealing with so many different people coming from many different backgrounds, and the intention is there to do something? What do you find in common? Is it the challenges, or is it the spirit of, you know, being proactive and solving this global humanitarian issue?
So here's the big challenge, and maybe this is a challenge for everybody here. I am sure you face it being an advisor to many of the COPs and UFCCC. The problem with climate is it's not real yet in our minds today. It's something that will happen in 10 years and 50 years. So we managed to create the fear, but it's not fear that people worry about. It's very strange. I'll give you an example. Humans, so I'm going to go into neuroscience now. We know we use our frontal cortex for making certain decisions. We have our left brain, sort of right brain. Left brain is responsible for analytics, data, languages, everything we call logic. Right brain is responsible for all the emotions, feelings, music, creativity. Now, studies have shown that we don't make a single decision using our left brain. We think, analyze, but when we come to make that purchase, that decision, who to marry, who to vote for, it's the right brain that's in control. So humans are not logical. We don't have Homo economicus. If we were logical, nobody would smoke, because we know smoking leads to people dying. If we were logical, nobody would eat fast food, because we know that's bad for your health. However, people smoke, they have shisha, they eat fast food, and it's the same with the climate.
And they've had enough warnings.
We've had enough warnings, so we created the fear. Everybody's very afraid of smoking, but they go out and enjoy a shisha in the afternoon. So there's something about deferred consequences. It's bad for you, but not today. It's bad for me in 20 years. So what we are finding out that nobody disagrees. I'm sure you live the same thing. Nobody disagrees with anything we're saying here. But when you say do it now, I could wait. I could have one more cigarette, just one more cheeseburger, just one more fossil fuel car, just one more piece of plastic, because it's not today. So what we're trying to fix is, how do we change that mentality? How do we talk to the right brain and make sure, because we can't punish people into fixing the climate. You can't force people to pay for climate pricing and put CBAM on the borders and ban plastic and ban this and ban fossil fuel cars. That's not, nobody throughout history has shown us a single policy that used negative incentives for long-term success. You can scare people or punish them into certain things. Unless your kids understand the value of wearing a seat belt, no matter how much the fines are, they will still not wear it. They have to understand why they should wear it, as opposed to, if I don't wear it, somebody will ban me. So we're trying to switch the conversation to, can this become a habit? So this is the hard part. Nobody disagrees with the problem. But the solution, it can wait, or somebody else can do it, somebody else can pay for it. I'll wait for other countries to move. It's not my problem just yet.
But it's very clear that your approach is very much human-centric. You really are focusing on people. So climate action and change management is really predominantly about us, about people, the decision makers in this. Tell me more, and tell us more examples of, your work and how you've taken that line of thinking and gone deeper into it to implement.
So here's what we've done. So in public policy generally, in the last maybe 10 years, for any of you who reads public policy books, and I'm assuming not many, it's not the most exciting thing to read, but look, we have something now that became a bit more trendy in terms of discussions, behavioral economics, the idea of nudging. How do you use behavioral science to produce policies that actually work, as opposed to assuming people are logical, and I tell you smoking is bad, seatbelt is good, then you're a logical human being and you do that. Behavioral economics says people don't know what's best for them. You can't manipulate them, but you can change how they think about these things. So one thing we're doing now is the starting session yesterday. I'm sure you've seen His Excellency the Minister sat with a bunch of kids and had a conversation with these kids. And for us, the question is, how do we get these kids to think naturally about living sustainably? How do we make sustainability? Our project, which is, by the way, our colleague from PepsiCo, Wael, isn't here, but our project now we're working on is supported by PepsiCo. Our project is, how do we make sustainability a second language? Something we do naturally from a very young age, as opposed to we let the kids grow up and then we start beating sustainability into them and punishing them. And so what we're trying to do is figure out how do we change habits from a very young age, and how we make sure people understand that, or not understand, even live naturally and sustainably in a way that they make these decisions effortlessly. And that's the nudge approach to public policy. Governments are open to it. We have to approach kids in schools. The minister said something that I thought maybe my one takeaway from the whole forum that I will never forget. As he said, Sarah, you said about people. We consume everything. We buy the houses, we eat the food, we use the plastic. It's us. Stop doing the wrong things, and the production line producing the wrong things will stop. We can't blame the producers. We can't blame the people at the far end, downstream, upstream, people who provide plastic. It's us. Again, if you want to stop smoking, convince people smoking is bad. Don't punish the smoking companies and blame them. Everybody's into it together. But changing behavior is the hardest thing. And we're now trying to experiment with new policies to say, can we introduce things in schools that would make kids grow up with sustainability as a second language, not something we have to clean later or clear later. By the time a kid reaches 10 or 11 years, the developmental damage is done. What they eat, what they understand, who they love, what they think. Developmental age stops about 7 mentally, not stops, peaks. So we can, everything after the age of 10, 11 is fixing or trying to remedy things. And that's where we're trying to experiment. It's very long term. We're playing the long game on this one. We're doing many other things that are short term for 2023 and 24, but this one we think we're playing the long game on. So we don't have COP38 having the same conversation.
So I'm getting incredibly informative, say slogans and takeaways. So definitely to raise the level, we're aware of the problem. It's just raising the level of urgency to the point where we're uncomfortable enough and we do something about it rather than just worry and then go about our day. The second thing is that we control a lot more through behavior that can actually affect decision-making and the consumption patterns. But I think the most important thing that you are talking about today is investing the knowledge, right from the grassroots, which is the younger people, to give them the tool to normalize the language of sustainability, that it becomes, the normal. And that's an incredible point. How can you see this being really implemented if we were to say, let's go now, let's start this now?
So here, I'll tell you what we're struggling with. So please come up to me afterwards and help us figure this through, because we're really at the edge of new public policy here with this. So in Arabic, we have a saying, لا تعلموا أبناءكم كما علمكم آباءكم فهم خلقوا لزمان غير زمانكم. Which means don't teach your kids the same things your parents taught you, because they've been born for a different age. Now the challenge is people who put public policies today, people who write them, people who put the incentives, we're 30 years old, 40 years old, 50 years old. We have attention spans that used to sit down for 30 long seconds to watch an advert. Most of you know how to read a newspaper. We put policies for kids whose average attention span is 3 seconds now. This is not me, this is Apple. The average human attention span dropped from 13 seconds in 2000. It was 30 when I grew up, 13 in 2000. The goldfish has an attention span of 9 seconds. Our kids have 3. You can't teach them the same way we taught ourselves. We cannot change their behavior through our old technologies or our old curriculum. So how can we talk their language? How can we bring it down to instant incentives, instant gratification, and speak with kids who 140 characters is a way too boring for them? And that's the behavior we're trying to influence now. And that's the very hard part, is we're trying to influence a generation that is almost 100% different from our generation with our policies. So I'll leave you with this. I'm sure we are out of time, but the way we always mention this is we are trying to solve 21st century problems, climate change, with institutions and policy, with the institutions and technologies and organizations designed in the 20th century, with policies written in the 19th century. The gap is huge, and it's getting bigger between what we can do as companies, what the governments are able to regulate, and where the society is. And we hope we are a small part in bridging this nexus.
Indeed you are, Dr. Yassar Jarrar. Thank you very much for this enlightening conversation. And thank you very much for hosting us, Forbes. Thank you.